So at this time of year, my thoughts are often on what I can do now to get a really abundant winter and early spring. It's kind of relatively easy to get an abundant late spring, but early spring's a little bit more of a challenge. And it's worthwhile thinking about it now because certainly for us, April and May months in Lytham St Annes, and so it goes without saying you don't want to waste all of that light on little tiny seedlings. You want that light to be used growing you an abundance of food. And so one of the things we've always done is to grow kale in the polytunnel. So I would sow it now and I'd put it in the polytunnel in October time, and the plants will be about this sort of size, and they'd grow happily through October and a little bit into November, and then they kind of stall a little bit, and then they pick up growth again later on in the season. And the reason that I did that is because I got really healthy, vigorous plants in February, March, April and early May, which I would harvest like crazy at a time when the kale outside is kind of coming to an end. So yeah, late sowing was really important to me. But then I realised that maybe I could do just as good a job by using some of my low tunnels outside and use these beds in the polytunnel for something that is kind of more of a challenge outside. And so what I'm going to be doing this year is I'm going to be using these polytunnel beds for things like calabrese and early cauliflowers, early turnips, early beetroot, early carrots, and all sorts of other kind of goodies that really suited to the polytunnel environment. And I'm going to try doing my kale outside. So that's what I've done. I sowed it a month earlier because it's not going to have quite the advantages that it's going to have in the polytunnel, and I'm going to stick it in one of my low tunnels and I'm going to plant it today. So this is the bed in the polytunnel that I was talking about, and this bed represents about 30% of the growing area in the polytunnel, and the polytunnel cost, well, let's say it cost £1,000 just for round numbers, and so that bed cost me £300. And to fill that bed with kale seems a bit of a waste, doesn't it? So this little low tunnel probably cost about £30 with the raised bed as well, and so about a tenth as much. And so if it can do the same job as the polytunnel, then I'm quids in, aren't I? So that's what I'm going to try. There's my little plants, some curly kales and some Tuscan kales. I think that's Black Magic, and I'm not 100% sure what that one is. I think it's Vates Blue. Maybe there's some other varieties in there as well, but yeah, so I'm keen to give this a go. So nowadays, before I plant, I'm always pre-watering the holes with this fish solution and seaweed solution. I'm not sponsored by these guys, but I really like the results. The plants just seem to get away like crazy, and yeah, I've not done any scientific experiments, but it just seems, I've just noticed, that the results are really great. And one of these days I'll do an experiment, but I just, at the moment, I just don't want to disadvantage my plants just for the sake of an experiment, but I'll get around to it one of these days. Anyway, just a couple of capfuls of each in here, and we'll see how they go. So I'm putting all 18 of these plants in, and normally I would give kale a bit more space, but given the time of year, they're only going to grow into relatively small plants, and they're going to grow slowly. So, a small, slow-growing plant doesn't need as much space. I've given these a bit more space at this side than this side, because these are going to be the Tuscan kales, and these are going to be the curly kale. Curly kale grows a bit bigger. So these are Black Magic, sowing batch number 432. They were sown on the 15th of July, so just under a month ago, and seed packet 279. And yeah, this is one of the things I really like about grow lights. These are all grown under lights, is you've got just fantastic leaf growth on these plants, even though they're less than a month old. And it's always kind of my objective now to try and get most plants in the ground within a month, and the grow lights are really helping with that. And the 1 month thing means that I get more consistency in my growing, because it used to be that some things used to take 6 weeks, some things used to take 8, some things used to take 4. Now I've just got a combination of growing environments that let me get pretty much everything ready to plant that quickly. I like planting things young. I like planting things that have not got a root system that's too overdeveloped, and I'm really happy with the grow light system. Although I grew pretty well without grow lights as well. It's just a refinement, just makes my life a little bit easier. It also means I can use smaller module trays because the plants are younger, and that saves on compost as well and space. So the curly kale is this Vates blue, and this was sowing batch 433 and seed packet 93. And the reason that I'm just mentioning this is partly so that anybody that's got access, which is everybody, to my sowing log can actually look up this and see when I sowed it, how I sowed it and things like that, but also because the videos are a more permanent record than the labels. The labels often blow away, or the pen fades and all of that sort of thing, and I lose track of what I did when. So anyway, let's get planting these little beauties. Now, I think one of the reasons that this fish emulsion, kelp emulsion thing works so well is that I only fertilise my ground with very slow release fertilisers, things like well-rotted cow manure and seaweed meal and that sort of thing. And as I say, the release is extremely slow from those, especially when you're doing things in early spring, for example, which I do a lot of planting in early spring and late winter, and at that time the ground is very cold, and so more bioavailable fertilisers I think really pay dividends. One thing that people often forget is that you do have to absolutely check for eggs before you plant. It's quite incredible. These plants have only been outside, just acclimatising to the weather, for 2 days, and I think I found 5 with caterpillar eggs on and 2 with caterpillars. How the 2 with caterpillars got the caterpillars on so quickly, I have no idea. So I've popped the little lotal off, because obviously I don't need that at the moment. I'll probably put that on mid-September, early October, but a lot of the time it's going to be open like this one. And that's one of the advantages as well over a polytunnel, is that you can adjust these uniquely to suit each individual crop. So I think we'll come back to these in a couple of weeks, see how they're getting on. There's only so much you can learn really by watching somebody planting plugs. So now these are planted, it's pretty clear. There's quite a bit of space between these plants. And so I always try and have a tray of turnips and radishes at this time of year. So I'm going to pop some of those in a few of the gaps. I'm not going to put too many in because I don't want to overwhelm those little plants. So it's the middle of September now, and everything's growing beautifully. I'm quite pleased with them. I've got a little bit of this kind of mildew on the underside of the leaves, so I've taken the worst of these off, and there's still plenty of really lovely quality leaves left on there. The little turnips are doing beautifully in there, so I've got some a bit further on other parts of the plot, so I'll leave these for another couple of weeks. But basically these turnips will be out just in time for the kale to kind of take over the space. These are a little bit further on than I'd hoped for at this time of year, so I've got some more plug plants to plant that are not quite so mature as well, so we're just working on the timings at the moment. But I always just trying to get rid of these leaves. These are the ones that seem to cause the most of the problems. And there's the last of those radishes. So that interplant worked really well. I'm really pleased with them. So I think we'll call that a success, but maybe start 2 or 3 weeks later next year for little plants to overwinter strong and grow on as vigorous plants in early spring. But these are going to be great over winter. So I hope you liked this quick video. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.